fake caring, anyone, once they know what to look for, can spot it immediately and avoid the humiliation ritual they had planned for you. But here's how you're going to get to the point where you can cut these perpetrators off at the knees and stop them stone cold in their tracks. Here's what happens. Someone is coming at you kind of presumptuously to apparently help you, but something is off. Since there's no proof, you just might dismiss it. Look out first for certain patterns in relationships, workplaces, families, and spiritual communities that do not look abusive on the surface, but that you just get a little odd feeling about. It really helps to write it down because that shows your inner guardian that you are respecting the caution signs that it's throwing up for you. A lot of the time, help from these people come wrapped in language that sounds caring, responsive, or concerned. That is part of why they're so effective. If someone came at you directly and obviously tried to undermine you, it would be much easier to identify. So what makes this kind of dynamic more difficult is that it often presents itself as if someone is checking in on you, when what is really happening is that your credibility is being lowered and your sense of footing is being disrupted. I wasn't always so astute at seeing these patterns. Before I left my job as a physicist, I had been moonlighting, and part of what I got into was some spiritual kind of woo-woo stuff, which I'm not knocking at all. But what I also got into with the woo was some really dark personalities with very hateful agendas, narcissists and psychopaths wrapped in goodness and fluffy rainbows. So I learned the swift and hard way that you cannot take people at face value and you must trust your intuition. And mainly, the only thing you can really trust inherently is your dreams. Why dreams? They are going to show you the hidden agenda, the patterns, and how you really feel about certain people or groups, even if you're trying really hard to feel differently about them. So, like in physics, dreams are all about systems, inputs, and outcomes. And that's why to spot humiliation on the horizon, you must pay attention to them and not to lip service or fancy parlor tricks. What dreams do so well in all of this is show not just the pain of the pattern, but the exact nature of the interference. They show where your expression is being redirected, where your privacy is being breached, and where your movement is constrained, and where your environment is distorting your perception. But they also show when you start recovering your own signal. And that's why I trust them more than anyone's words. You can even argue with your intuition or gut feeling, but dreams keep showing what's exactly happening underneath. If this is your first video from me, check out one of the many that I talk specifically about dreams and how to learn the language of your own dreams. I'll link to one of them at the end. So when I talk about a humiliation ritual, it's not actually about one dramatic event, though it can be. I'm talking about a set of interactions that gradually reduce someone's emotional safety and status within a system or group. It's more of a situation where a person is intentionally placed in a position of embarrassment, degradation, or loss of dignity, often in front of others and usually for a specific purpose. It typically involves a clear power imbalance where one person or group holds control while another is made vulnerable, and it's used to achieve an outcome like initiation or control. You'll see it show up in places like hazing, where people are made to earn their place through embarrassing tasks. In controlling dynamics, which is what I was exposed to, where it's used to break down identity and increase compliance. But it's also even seen in social situations like bullying or public shaming. What matters isn't the exact action, it's the function. It's about putting someone into a lowered, exposed state so their behavior, identity, or position can be influenced or questioned. And the word ritual doesn't always mean it's organized or ceremonial. It just means the pattern is intentional and repeated, not random. One of the clearest ways this happens is through care that is not actually functioning as real caring. Real care tends to be direct, private, and useful. It helps. It respects boundaries. It does not need an audience either. But there is another version of care that functions very differently. It shows up publicly. It is timed in a way that puts you on the spot. It shifts attention away from what you are saying and puts attention on your emotional or mental state instead. That is a very different thing. One thing you should definitely be doing is noticing if you say something in a meeting or in a conversation, and instead of responding to your actual point, someone asks whether you're okay. What has just happened in that moment? They have not engaged with you, they have repositioned you. Now the focus is no longer on the content of what you said. The focus is on whether you are stable, reasonable, or fit to be taken seriously. Looking at the effect is often more useful than looking at the wording. A sentence can sound caring and still be used to reduce your standing. If someone truly has a concern, there's usually a private and respectful way to address it. If instead it is brought up in front of other people or in a way that causes you to scramble and explain yourself, then it is worth asking if that was fake concern. This same is true when private information gets used in a different context. Maybe you disclose something vulnerable to one person because you thought it was safe. But then later, that detail starts appearing around other people in a way that makes you seem less composed, less credible, or less capable. That is not care. That is your vulnerability being repurposed to shape how you are seen. Another part of the pattern is repetition. There is a slow layering of pressure. You start hearing vague statements like, people have been asking about you, or people are concerned, or people have noticed something. Nothing is concrete enough to address cleanly, but it is enough for you to start scanning for incongruence. You should be replaying conversations with this new filter in mind. Now, here's the part most people miss, and this is where you can actually stop it fast. If someone tries to reposition you in real time, do not answer the repositioning. Bring it back to your point. If they say, "Are you okay?" instead of engaging with that, you can calmly say, "Let's stay on what I said." That alone breaks the pattern. If there is real concern, move it private immediately. If you have a concern, we can talk after. That removes the audience, which is where most of the damage is being done. You can also name the shift without getting emotional. "That's not what I said," or "You're changing the subject." You don't need a speech. You don't need to over-explain. In fact, the more you explain yourself, the more you accept the box that they put you in. And most importantly, trust that first signal. The moment something feels off, that's when you act, not later when you're trying to piece it together with logic. These people don't have logic. They barely think for themselves. Just saying the truth. Dreams reflect clearly what your nervous system is dealing with. You might have a dream where you're in a group setting and people suddenly turn and look at you, but there's no clear reason. Or you're being questioned, but the questions feel wrong, slippery, or disconnected from what's actually happening. Or you're trying to speak and the conversation keeps being redirected. I had one myself where I was literally saying to someone that this person was trying to discredit me. So obvious. Another version of this shows up as exposure, like a personal journal is opened, a private text is read out loud, a bag is searched, a bedroom door will not close, a bathroom stall has no door, or you find yourself underdressed, unprepared, or suddenly visible in a way that you didn't consent to. What that's saying is that something personal has been taken out of its appropriate container and placed in a setting where it can alter your position. That often parallels waking life dynamics where personal details or vulnerable disclosures are circulated in a way that changes how other people interpret you. When this dynamic grows beyond just one person, the experience can become even more disorienting. You start noticing multiple people reaching out with similar tones, similar questions, or similar knowledge. You may feel watched, tracked, or accounted for in ways that do not make sense. It can be subtle, but the overall effect is the same. Your movement starts to feel less private, and your choices start feeling like they require explanation. Dreams mirror this too. You're being followed, observed, tracked, unable to leave, or repeatedly pulled back into interactions. Sometimes you're trying to leave a building and people keep stopping you. Sometimes you're packing and people keep opening your suitcase. Sometimes you're driving and your GPS keeps getting rerouted. These dreams are showing your movement, your autonomy is being interfered with. A lot of people miss the significance of this because they are focused on proving intent. They want to know whether people meant harm, whether it was deliberate, or whether they're just overreacting. But the more useful question is, what is the pattern doing? Is it increasing your clarity, safety, and agency? Or is it making you second guess yourself, explain yourself more, and feel less stable in your own position? I think this is especially important in spiritual communities where people expect care, confidentiality, or spiritual maturity. In those settings, people assume that concern is trustworthy by default. That's the mistake I made. But high trust environments can be some of the easiest places for concern to be used as a cover for intrusion. This is also why people who are perceptive or who tend to tell the truth often become targets in these systems. If you notice inconsistencies and you ask questions or you don't automatically go along with a group narrative, then that means that your credibility matters to you. So abusers see that as something that could weaken them. One of the most important turning points is when you start seeing the pattern instead of just feeling it. At first, it just feels confusing or destabilizing, but later you start noticing the mechanics. Things change when you truly believe what you're seeing, that certain questions only show up in front of other people, that concern doesn't come with real support, and that your private info just keeps surfacing. Dreams shift at this point too. Instead of confusion, they start showing recognition. You might still be in the same type of setting in the dream, but now you notice who is doing what. You leave the room, you refuse to hand something over, you observe without getting pulled in. That's the shift. Once the humiliation ritual has been stopped, there may still be fallout. This can come in the form of an isolation phase, but even though the people trying to discredit you were being jerks, it can still feel very lonely, but it's absolutely worth sticking this phase out. Many people stay in these unhealthy dynamics because the need to belong overrides what they're seeing. But once that pull loosens, a kind of clear space starts to return. So, hey, if you've been in a season where you feel more watchful, more private, or more aware of how certain people phrase things, don't rush to dismiss that. But also, if you want to clearly know what your dreams are showing you about a certain situation, join me in my free school community where you can message me directly and we can look over a dream. Link is at the top of the comments and description. And also, here's the dream video I promised to link to earlier. Take care, my friends. Mashka, I have to do this last video, okay? I gotta do it. So, can I please? Can I please? Please. I can see that you clearly don't want me to. I can see that. Little puppies. My little puppies. My little puppies. It shows up publicly in a timed way. Oh boy. I'm going to have to start over.